Okay, welcome to the January the 24th one-year chronological reading insights video. We're going to be in Job chapter 19 through Job chapter 21. Job chapter 19, let's jump into it. Job is, when we get into chapter 19, Job is replying to Bildad in chapter 18. And this is the one that's really popular about his Redeemer living. Basically, what you see in this chapter 19, Job agrees in verses 17 through 20 with a lot of what Bildad had said in chapter 18 regarding just what basically the what hell is like, what being basically attacked by God, being punished by God, what that's like. He agrees, with Bildad. Although we just must continue to understand that Job's not agreeing with his friend. So when we come in here into chapter 19, first in verses 1 through 6, there's this idea of Job just reiterates to his friends. We basically see that Job's friends attack him. Okay? He's describing how his friends attack him. Verse 1, then Job answered and said, how long will you torment me and break me in pieces with your words? These 10 times you have cast reproach upon me. Are you not ashamed to wrong me? He could feel the wrongness that his friends, they are attacking him. Verse 4, and even if it be true that I have erred, he says, my error remains with myself. So he's saying, even if I have erred, you say have erred, friends, that remains with myself. It's not even against you. Why are you attacking me, friends? Verse 5, if indeed you magnify yourselves against me, he says, and make my disgrace an argument against me, know then that God has put me in the wrong and closed his net about me. God is fully capable, friends, of taking care of me. You don't have to disgrace me. God has put me in the wrong and closed his net about me. Indeed, you magnify yourselves. You are prideful with how you're counseling me against me and make my disgrace an argument against me. My disgrace, he's saying, you are looking at what's actually happened in my life and you have come to the conclusion in your system of how God works that my disgrace, that's all that's happened to me, that's the main argument against me. I try to argue to you about the nuances of how God works, and you just keep going back to this idea of if you do bad, immediately bad happens. If you do good, immediately good happens. And obviously I've done bad. And so he says, know then that God has put me in the wrong and closed his net about me. Like God, if I've done wrong, then God is capable of taking care of that. But why are you are attacking me? Now he goes in verse 7. We go from verse 7 to verse 12, and you kind of have this idea of he's lamenting. Basically, he's kind of lamenting, God's attack on him. This is where you find some agreement with what Bildad had said in chapter 18, when Bildad basically describes the horrors of hell, basically. He says in verse 7, behold, I cry out violence, but I am not answered. I call for help, but there is no justice. This is how he feels, like it hurts. He has walled up my way so that I cannot pass. He has set darkness upon my paths. Verse 9. He has stripped from me my glory and taken the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side and I am gone. And my hope he has pulled up like a tree. Trees are hard to pull up, but he's just describing the lament of God's attack on him. He has kindled his wrath against me, and he counts me as his adversary. Remember, Job doesn't get a picture into heaven in 1:2 about what's happening. So he doesn't really know, is God his adversary in some way? But once again, he's lamenting when he says this, right? He's lamenting because in a little bit, you're going to find him coming back to the Lord and said, I know my Redeemer lives. So just God's people can lament. They say, God, this hurts, but I trust you. All right, you'll see him do that by the end. Holy lamenting. Verse 12. His troops came on together. They have cast up their siege ramp against me and encamped about my tent. He basically is saying, here's me in this just little tent, and then God's got a whole army, just a whole big army, a siege ramp against me, just a big, God's got his big army, and that big army is coming against just me and my little tent. Here's my little tent, and God is completely surrounding me with his siege. So he's lamenting God's attack on him. Then he's lamenting the isolation from human companionship that's been brought on by what God's done. How even his friends, but everybody else around him. So, this is dark. Look in this is actually, we're going to be looking in verse 13 through really 20. We find him basically, he talks about how God basically has isolated him from companionship. Everything that's happened to him, it's made others think he's guilty, even his friends. He says this, he has put my brothers far from me. Okay, God is isolating me. Okay, and those who knew me are wholly estranged from me, i.e. his three friends. My relatives have failed me. My close friends have forgotten me. The guests in my house and my maidservants count me as a stranger. I have become a foreigner in their eyes. You see how he's saying, I'm isolated from companionship. I call to my servants, but he gives me no answer. I must plead with him with my mouth for mercy. My breath is strange to my wife. Even my wife, I'm isolated from companionship. Even from my wife, my breath is strange to my wife, and I am a stench to the children of my own mother. So that would obviously be his siblings. Even young children despise me. When I rise, they talk against me. All my intimate friends abhor me, and those whom I loved have turned against me. The isolation that he is experiencing from companionship. Verse 20, my bones stick to my skin and to my flesh, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. So he's just describing the absolute loneliness and isolation. Once again, what a shadow of the Savior who experienced isolation. He had to suffer and die alone. He even had to experience the isolation for a period of being God forsaken as he took on the wrath of God against mankind's sin. We get to verse 20 and 21. He basically kind of cries out in two verses to his friends. He's just cataloged the isolation from God that God has calls from human companionship, and then he kind of calls out to his friends like, come on guys, why don't you just stop attacking me? Have mercy. Are you not satisfied with what you've said and what you've seen happen in my life? He says, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me, O my friends. For the hand of God has touched me. Why do you, like God, pursue me? He just basically tells his friends, why are you acting like God to me? Why are you attacking me like I've been attacked by God? Why are you not satisfied with my flesh? I mean, remember, his health was even struck. He's like, why are you not even satisfied with this? So, hold on. So that's basically in verses 21 through 22. We see him basically, he's asking the questions, to his friends about why they're not satisfied with all the attacks against him. Verse 23. Now, if his friends are so against him, the thing is, he looks like he's going down to death. He admits it. So he says this, oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book. He's basically saying all that the innocence that he has, he basically wishes it could be written down or it could be inscribed on a headstone, because he's afraid that his friends have such disdain for him because of what they think that they'd write something bad on his tombstone, basically. He says, "Oh, that an iron pen and lead were engraved in the rock forever." He wishes a true narrative of what was going on, but his fear is that in death, he'll be attacked by his friends. So basically, you put verse 23 through 24, he's basically saying in death, he would basically be attacked by his friends. He's like, you'd say something bad about me. I wish I could be engraved on a rock about what's actually happened. So the story of my life, nothing's bad is said, which, by the way, that actually did happen. It's the Bible. We're reading it right now. Verse 25, he basically tells them, this is what I love. He's been lamenting, talking about God's attack, telling his friends are attacking him, the isolation that he feels from what God has done to him. His friends aren't satisfied. Even if he was to die, they try to write stuff on his headstone that just put him in a bad light. But then he basically lets them know, even in death, though, even though you may write things against me in verse 23 and 24, in death I will be glorified and vindicated. He says, it's a beautiful part, I know my Redeemer lives, and at last he shall stand upon the earth. He will destroy any false things. He will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God. He's talking about being glorified. He's talking about eternal life. He knows his Redeemer lives. Although Jesus hasn't come yet, obviously, he's having faith looking forward towards the cross like we look back towards the cross. He says, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. My heart faints within me. This is what he's looking for. So he kind of gives his, I know my Redeemer lives. He gives that in verse 25 through 27 is, he basically knows that even though he's attacked, he knows there is redemption. And then you go over to verse 28 through 29. So his friends, remember back in verse 21, 22, he was like, why do you pursue like God pursue me? Are you not satisfied with my flesh? He says, like, are you not satisfied with what's happened to me? And then he basically lets his friends know that if they don't change what they believe, he's telling his friends in these two verses, they will miss glorification. And get judgment. So they've been telling him how he's going to be judged and what he's doing wrong. And he's kind of turning the script on him here and says, if you say how we will pursue him and the root of the matter is found in him, you're basically saying it's really all Job, it's really all me. He says, be afraid of the sword, for wrath brings the judgment of the sword, that you may know that there is judgment. He's saying like you're way off. You're just so off here that you're going to bring judgment on yourself here. Quit saying the root of the matter is found in him, in Job. Quit saying how we will pursue him. They were persecuting him, inaccurate in what they were thinking. So he delivers this message to them where we find him having hope in the Redeemer. And now Zophar, he now has something he wants to say. Holding to the true character of his friends, Zophar kind of has had a belly full, so he's got some things he wants to say. And basically Zophar, you could kind of look at him, he's like that old school kind of hellfire and damnation preacher, okay? He's the hellfire and damnation guy, right? Here's Zophar. He's just going to let him have it. And basically in verses 1 through 11, basically Zophar is letting him know that the joy that the wicked experience is short-lived. So basically, he's describing, Zophar is just saying, hey, you're guilty and you're wicked and it's going to be short-lived. Now, it's interesting. Some things he says, this is actually true. Some of these are actually very true statements, but they're just poorly applied to Job's situation because he was innocent. He wasn't innocent of original sin, but he was innocent of doing anything that called for the extreme measures of what he had lost in life. So here's what Zophar says, describing how the short-lived joy of the wicked, and he's really applying this towards Job. Therefore my thoughts answer me because of my haste within me, Zophar says. I hear censure that insults me. He's saying, I'm insulted by what you've been saying, Job, how you've been answering back. And out of my understanding, a spirit answers me. So he says, I know what the truth is. My spirit knows what's true. Do you not know this from old, since man was placed on the earth? Like, I've got tradition on my side, Job, that the exalting of the wicked is short and the joy of the godless but for a moment. He's saying, Job, you have lost everything. You got to enjoy all what you had as a wicked man for a moment, but now it's been taken away. And the fact that it's taken away shows that it was just for a moment. Though his height mounts up to the heavens and his head reached to the clouds, he's saying, Job, that was you. You were considered the wealthiest man of the East. He will perish forever like his own dung. Those who have seen him will say, where is he? He will fly away like a dream and not be found. He will be chased away like a vision of the night. He's just talking about the fleeting joy of the wicked, ascribing it to Job. The eye that saw him will see him no more, nor will his place any more behold him. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands shall give back his wealth. You'll lose your wealth. That's what happened to Job. That was a sign to Zophar that Job really was guilty. It says his bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust, that it's gone. His youthful vigor is gone. So he basically says to him, the joy of the wicked is so short-lived, and you're an example of that in verses 1 through 11. And then Zophar goes further, and he basically says in verses 12 through 19, in verses 12 through 19, we see that Zophar delivers this message that that basically that Job, he is considered wicked, that basically the wicked eat poison, but think it's delicious. Or wicked eat poison. Let's say this, that's disguised. Eat poison disguised as delicious. I'm going to correct that. Should be a So he says the wicked eat poison disguised as something delicious. That's you, Job. So it says, though evil is sweet in his mouth, though he hides it under his tongue, he's putting the sugary substance, but is actually laced with poison. He's saying, this is you, Job. This is what the wicked do. Though he is loath to let it go and holds it in his mouth, yet his food is turned to his stomach. It is venom of cobras within him. He's saying basically the wicked, they may enjoy the sweets of the moment of what they've been doing, but it's poison to them. This is you, Job. This is you. You're the wicked. You've enjoyed the sweets, but it had bitter, bitter viper venom in it. He swallows down riches and vomits them up. God casts them out of his belly. He will suck the poison of cobras. The tongue of the viper will kill him. The fact that it looks like Job's about to die from even his health being taken is a sign to them that he's been up to evil. He's been this wealthy man. He's been a wealthy, wicked man in Zophar's mind. He will not look upon the rivers, the streams flowing with honey and curds. He will give back the fruit of his toil and will not swallow it down. From the profit of his trading, he will get no enjoyment. So whatever he's been making off his trade, he won't. The wicked who's been enjoying the sweets laced with poison. Verse 19, for he has crushed and abandoned the poor, and he has seized a house that he did not build. Some think that this is actually the accusations of what Zophar thinks maybe that Job has done wrong, that he's been doing some kind of, maybe he's been doing some kind of trading that's been skimming off the top. That's the sin that he's been doing, because they're connecting it to his extreme wealth that he had before, or that he's been seizing people's houses and, making his money through kind of, I guess you could say, salty real estate deals. So, Zophar's just going after him. So he says, this is the wicked. The wicked are eating their sweets, but their sweets are really lined with poison. And that's you. God's taken away everything from you. You've been eating the poison and you've loved it because you thought it was sweet to you, but it was killing you all the way that you've been stealing from people, Job. Then he goes in verses 20 through 29, and Zophar basically now talks about how the wicked will experience inescapable wrath. And once again, he's saying, Job, you are this wicked person. Okay? This is you. He says the wicked will experience inescapable wrath. He says, Job, because he knew no contentment in his belly, he will not let anything in which he delights escape him. There was nothing left after he had eaten. Therefore, his prosperity will not endure. In the fullness of his sufficiency, he will be in distress. The hand of everyone in misery will come against him. Like wrath is coming, even everybody comes against him. Verse 23. To fill his belly to the full, God will send his burning anger against him and rain it upon his own body. Just the inescapable wrath of God. Of course, he's saying, Job, this has to be you because look at it rain down on your body. He will flee from an iron weapon, but a bronze arrow shall strike him. He'll try to get away, but you may flee from a sword, but the arrow is going to get you. Job, this is you. I can see it in your life. Zophar saying, you are that wicked who you can't seem to escape God's wrath, Job, and that's what happens with the wicked. They cannot escape the wrath of God, and this has happened to you, and you can't escape it. Job, you must be guilty. You are getting what you deserve. I mean, he's delivering this kind of a hellfire brimstone message. It is drawn forth and comes out of his body. The glittering point comes out of his gallbladder. Terrors come upon him. Utter darkness is laid up for his treasures. A fire not fanned will devour him. That is left in his tent will be consumed. Do you get this? The inescapable, you can't escape from God's wrath. This is what Zophar is telling Job. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. The possessions of his house will be carried away, dragged off in the day of God's wrath. This is the wicked man's portion from God, Zophar says, the heritage decreed for him by God. So basically, Zophar is saying, guess what, Job? This describes Job. This is Job. All of this is Job. This describes you, Job. This is you. So Job, we know you're guilty. Job, you're getting what you deserve. You need to repent of it. And actually, at this point, they're getting a little bit upset with him. It seems like their conversation is not a lot about repentance. So they don't like what Job is telling them. They're miserable comforters. They're wrong. They don't like that. So now we come back over to Job chapter 21. So Job spoke in chapter 19. Now Zophar speaks. Now Job speaks again. And he's speaking to his friends, but also in some parts he's speaking to God as well. And he basically tries to turn their argument on its head. Because basically what they're saying is, if you're wicked, all these bad things are going to happen to you. And they happen immediately. That's how God works. If you do right, immediate blessing happens. They have no nuance for God's providence and timing and sovereignty of how all that happens. They are true. The righteous are blessed. The wicked are not. There is a truthfulness to that. But how they were applying it was, they were Pharisees. They point right to the Pharisees that Jesus experienced himself. Now, interesting, when you come to chapter 21, Job kind of takes their arguments, the system of which their religious system, and flips it on its head and basically uses the example of someone who is wicked and who prospers. Okay? They were telling him basically the wicked don't prosper. And he says, well, let me give you an example. Do you ever see the wicked that do prosper? So we first have in verses 1 through 6 is kind of an intro. He basically, Job lets them know that the fact that the wicked prosper, it shows that your system does not work. That's what it shows. Your system does not work. Then Job answered and said, and this is kind of an intro, right? Just kind of an introduction to his thoughts. Then Job answered and said, keep listening to my words, and let this be your comfort. Bear with me, and I will speak, and after I have spoken, mock on. So he says, just shut up for a little bit and listen to me, and then go ahead, after I've spoken, go ahead and keep mocking like you've done thus far. As for me, Job says, is my complaint against man? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be appalled and lay your hand over your mouth. That's really what they should have done. They should have just kept their mouth shut. Then I remember I am dismayed, and shuddering seizes my flesh. Why do the wicked live? So now he goes into the next part. Why do the wicked live each old age? So he now transitions. We got in verses 7 through 13. He basically describes the prosperity of the wicked. And he's trying to make a point to them and say, if your system works so well that if you're wicked, you get immediately judged, and you're applying that filter to my life, what do you do with those who are wicked and actually do live a long and prosperous life? How does that work out? Your system is broken. So he's trying to use some of their arguments against them. He says in verse 7, why do the wicked live and reach old age? Why do wicked people live to be in old age and grow mighty in power? I mean, haven't you seen that? Haven't you seen people who are wicked still live prosperous lives? He says their offspring are established in their presence, and their descendants before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, and no rod of God is upon them. He's like, God hasn't judged them. The wicked prosper all the time. Your system doesn't equate for that, does it? Their bulls breed without fail. Their cows and calves do not miscarry. They send out their little boys like a flock, and their children dance. Their children are happy. There's no cares for these wicked, wealthy people. They sing to the tambourine and lyre and rejoice to the sound of the pipe. They spend their days in prosperity, and in peace they go down to the grave. Unlike Joel, that's not how Job is actually looking to go to the grave at this point. Not in peace, but the wicked do. The prosperous wicked, they say to God. So basically in verses 7 through 13, he just basically gives a description of the wicked prospering. Then he transitions to verse 14. And in verse 14 through 16, he basically talks about the thoughts and the life of those prosperous wicked people. He's trying to show them their system doesn't work. He says in verse 14, they say to God, these wicked, prosperous people, depart from us. We do not desire knowledge of your ways. So Job's saying that's what these people, some of these prosperous people do. They don't even want God. They say, God, depart from us. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? They don't want to serve the Almighty. And what profit do we get if we pray to him? They don't want to pray to him unless they can get something from him. These same people, Job says, we see these kind of people prosper all the time. He says in verse 16, behold, is not their prosperity in their hand? I mean, they've got plenty of wealth and resources and they're wicked. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. Job's saying, that's nowhere near my situation. So he said, I wasn't doing any of those things, but you see the wicked prosper. But you saw because I was prospering and now God took it away that I must have been wicked. That's not true because we see wicked not actually go through what I've gone through. He's trying to point out their system is wrong, is broken. Now verses 17 through 26. He shows that basically he shows the prosperous, that the wicked prosper, and even how what they think and live, and then he shows in verses 17 through 26 that the lack of punishment the prosperous wicked receive. So he's pointing out, like, listen, you know that even there's many times that they don't receive punishment. And how are you telling me you're right about what you've told me about my life, friends, when I can point out to you plenty of situations? You know this. Verse 17, how often is it that the lamp of the wicked is put out, that their calamity comes upon them and God distributes pain in his anger? He's saying, how often do you see that? You don't see punishment very often. That they are like straw before wind and like chaff after the storm carries away. You say, so Job kind of anticipates their response. You say, basically Job saying this is what his friends would say, they're in their system, that they would say, God stores up their iniquity for their children. Let him pay it out to them that they may know it. Let their own eyes see their destruction of their children. All right. And let them drink the wrath of the Almighty. So basically they go, when the prosperous, his friends, their response to this would be, well, the prosperous wicked, what happens is God takes it out on those people's children and they experience destruction. That's how God works. That's how it works. And Job basically comes in and says, you're defending a system that's really broken because of verse 24. For what do they care? The prosperous wicked who are now dead, what do they care for their houses after them when the number of their months is cut off? It's like so the judgment that this prosperous wicked experience is just that their kids are affected. You think that actually supports the system of how you're judging me? Verse 22. Will any teach God knowledge, seeing that he judges those who are on high? So he's saying, like, this doesn't make sense what you're coming up with, guys. Verse 23. He's saying, you're trying to judge righteously about my situation. It's unrighteously. And I'm showing you that's not even consistent because we see a lack of punishment for the prosperous wicked all the time. And he's like, guys, you can't really tell. He says, like, let me give you an example. Two different guys. One who dies in his full vigor, being wholly at ease and secure, his pails full of milk and the marrow of his bones moist. Here's one guy. This is how one guy dies. And then another dies in the bitternesses of his soul, having tasted of prosperity. They lie alike in the dust and the worms cover them. He says, we got two different guys and they both die and both of them lived differently. But, in the end, you don't really know. You don't really know what was going on in his life. You don't really know how much of a sinner he was. You don't really know what God is doing with that person. You think you do, but you don't. They both just lie down in the dust and the worm covers them. You don't really know. That's what he's trying to let his friends know. You don't really actually see things as well as you think you do. And a great evidence is the wicked, prosperous aren't destroyed. You see that all the time. And by the way, don't we see that sometimes where we wonder, why do bad people prosper and good people seem not to prosper? I mean, this is the thing that you can't just figure God out to such a reducing system. He is the sovereign, untamable God. He does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, with whomever he wants. And our goal is to glorify him. Our goal is to praise him, not for the goodies, but because of who he is. And by the way, that's Job. Job is more concerned about God than he is all the goodies from God. But his friends, they're more concerned about the goodies, because that's how they measure life. How much goodies you have. And so, are we pleasing to God? How much goodies do we have? Verse 27 to verse 34, we end this reading. Verse 27. Okay, verse 27 through verse 34. So he basically talks to them how they are ignorant about the prosperous wicked. He lets them know that, you really don't know what's going on. You don't understand. I'm pointing out to you that the wicked prosper all the time, and you're saying that's not true. And if they did, God would judge their children. And he's letting his friends know, you're actually just staying cooped up in your kind of perch of a life, and you don't really know what's going on down on the street. He says, behold, I know your thoughts and your schemes to wrong me. Wow. All right, he's calling them out. For you say, where is the house of the prince? Where is the tent in which the wicked lived? So basically, he's saying that what his friends would say is, well, the wicked lose everything. So there's no such thing as wicked prosperous. They, his friends, he says, for you say, he basically is saying that, like, his friends would say, well, yeah, the wicked prosperous, they lose everything. Okay, so no, Joe, we do believe that. Have you not asked those who travel the roads and who do not accept their testimony? He's basically saying, you haven't been asking people who travel the roads. Like, you say that, but you're actually clueless to this idea. You think you understand this, but you think you believe that, but you're actually clueless about it. Have you not asked those who travel the roads who do not accept their testimony? Have you asked those who are traveling the road, who actually know, who are actually out there, that the evil man is spared in the day of calamity and that he is rescued in the day of his wrath? Who declares his way to his face and who repays him for what he has done? So, he doesn't. But let me back up and just explain this. So, Job is now saying to them, verse 30, that the evil man is spared in the day of his calamity and that he is rescued in the day of his wrath. So, Job is saying to them, guys, you are ignorant of the prosperous wicked, that you say they lose everything, but you're not listening to people who are on the road who actually know. And no, I'm telling you in verse 30 that the evil man is spared in the day of his calamity, that the evil man is many times he's okay. Like, you can't admit that, friends, but this is true. And many times he is rescued in the day of his wrath. The wicked do prosper. Just shows you that your system of what you've applied to me is not correct. Who declares his way to his face and who repays him for what he has done. He's like, who declares this to the wicked prosperous? Who repays him for what he's done? When he is carried to the grave, watch is kept over his tomb. So, not even his tomb is desecrated. This prosperous wicked. He's like, don't you understand? The wicked do prosper. The clods of the valley are sweet to him. All mankind follows after him, and those who go before him are innumerable. He said, there's a lot of prosperous wicked. There's a lot of these that are that go out this way. So you're wrong, guys. Your system you use to judge me is wrong. How then will you comfort me with empty nothings? What you say is empty, guys. There is nothing left of your answers but falsehood. So Job is letting them know that this system that you've been trying to promote to me, it doesn't equal up. It doesn't equal up. I see the wicked prosper. You're not willing to listen to those out on the street about it. You've closed your eyes to it. You won't admit it. And I'm trying to help you see that you're not, that your wisdom that you've applied to me, even life shows you. You just got to open up your eyes and see it. But until you do, you're offering me, friends, empty nothings. You give me nothing but falsehood. So Job's friends, once again, man, can you just imagine being Job, trying to answer back his friends and all that Job's going through? Truly, there was no one who has suffered like Job, except there's one who actually suffered more than Job. Job suffered, but there's one who suffered more, the worst suffering anybody could ever, the wrath of God for man in his place. And Job, all this suffering, all this false accusation, Job points us to the one who bore this even more than Job ever could have. He points us to Jesus. Okay, that's December the 24th, and we'll see you for the 25th.